I'm Sarah Baxley, and welcome to Pinky the Bear. This is my Mystics, Metaphysics, and Mindfulness channel, and I am here today with your astrology forecast for the week of September 2nd, 2018. So the two upcoming themes for this week are 1, getting down to business, and 2, three-way street. All right, so let's start out with our first theme of the week, which is getting down to business. So, it's interesting. Actually, let me just backtrack a little bit. Before I get into the two themes, I just want to say it's really interesting because there are two very different energies that are going on this week, right? And I'm going to break down into those. And it's just interesting because one part of the energy is very grounding, and another part of the energy is kind of like there's kind of this unknown, right? Or there's kind of a lot of moving parts and a lot of things going on. So, when I was kind of looking at everything this week, I just thought there was a really interesting dynamic to the week, and so I just wanted to start it out that way, okay? So the first theme is getting down to business, right? And this is the first half of the energy this week. And, we talked about this a little bit last week, which is all of just there's 5 different planets in Earth signs right now, which basically, Earth has to do with our physical world, our physical environment, our material things, right? Our finances, just everything that's tangible and physical in our world, our immediate environment. It has to do with our, being organized, pragmatic, grounded, present, all of those different things. And basically, in addition to having all of that energy going on with 5 different planets in Earth signs right now, with the current transits where the planets are at, we also have a 6th one with Mercury ingressing into Virgo this upcoming Wednesday night. Pacific time, that is. Could be a different time. I'm coming from California, but Wednesday evening, could be Thursday for some of you, but Wednesday, we have Mercury ingressing into Virgo, and so that kind of adds a 6th Earth planet to this situation, right? To kind of the energy of what's going on, kind of causing us to really pay more attention to our physical world, what is and what is not working, what is and what is not comfortable, what is and is not, most efficient and practical and best for our long term, right? So, Mercury's in a very strong position in Virgo. In fact, Virgo's direct boss is actually Mercury. We call that rulership. So Mercury rules Virgo. And so that means that our, the quality of our thoughts, being able to go with the flow, it's a mutable sign. So really kind of going with the flow and kind of tackling things in a really efficient manner, potentially is going to come a little bit easier. Now, the thing that's also interesting, back to this getting down to business theme, is that literally, I kid you not, the day after on Thursday, Saturn stations direct. Now, Saturn's been retrograde since, I think, the middle of April, like April 17th or something like that. So that's April, May, June, July, August. So like 4.5 weeks, right? 4.5 months. Oh, I can't count. 4.5 months that, we've had Saturn retrograde. Now, the outer planetary retrogrades are a little bit different than personal planet retrogrades. And I want to kind of talk about this a little bit because planets like Mercury, Mars, Venus, we have a Venus retrograde coming up in October. Those are all ones that we tend to feel on a very personal level, right? The outer planetary retrogrades we don't feel, or they're not as conscious, like in the forefront of our consciousness, but it doesn't mean that they're any less significant. So I kind of just want to talk a little bit about Saturn retrograde. So basically, from April until now, Saturn has been appearing to go in backwards motion in the sky, basically causing us to kind of take some time, whether or not we were consciously doing it or unconsciously doing it, but basically, what are the things in our life that we are suiting up and showing up for? Saturn is all about responsibility. It's about suiting up and showing up and planning for our long term. Now, the other thing that's interesting is we talked about Mercury, being in its rulership in Virgo, but also Saturn is in its rulership as well in the sign of Capricorn. So, Capricorn is very pragmatic. It is very much about putting in the work now for payoff and for benefit down the line, right? Taking small steps, you know, kind of like the mountain goat scaling the mountain, taking small steps to a better future, right, for down the line. So, you know, the last few months with the Saturn retrograde, we've really kind of been reviewing, like, what are these things in our life that we are suiting up and showing up for? What are these things in our life that are most important? You know, what are these things in our life that we really need, you know, that we really do take responsibility for, right? What are the things that we want to dedicate our time and energy to? So, you know, though there might have been kind of a review with these kinds of things, like, what are these things that are really, you know, important to me that I'm, you know, wanting to make more time for, or have more accountability for? And with Saturn stationing direct this upcoming Thursday, you know, it's kind of like this, the veil is going to be lifted a little bit, in the sense that really the way that we want to move forward with our responsibilities is kind of going to be a little bit more clear. And I think that that's just really interesting, because it also ties in with all of this earth energy that's going on. So that's why I put getting down to business, right? So we have these 6 earth planets now with Mercury, Virgo. We have Saturn stationing direct in Capricorn, also an earth sign. And then on Friday, we have this grand earth trine, right? With Mercury in Virgo, Saturn in Capricorn, and with Uranus in Taurus. And so again, it's just, the most important thing to know is that it's just solidifying kind of this theme of us really grounding ourselves in our physical world, really creating what's best for us in our physical environment and in our immediate environment, both for now, for the present, as well as for the long term. And so this brings me into theme number 2 of the week, which is three-way street. And I'm going to kind of look down at my notes here a little bit, but basically I put, so the three-way street is what we think we want, what we actually want, and the way that we're going about it are all in completely different directions. And ultimately, the common denominator to those 3 goes back to all of that earth energy. And it's important for us to go back. The answer to those 3 different things is always what's best for us in the long term. And that's going to kind of be our guiding light, you know, that's kind of grounding us through this kind of, you know, hazy time a little bit. Because basically what we think we want, that's kind of like this Sun opposition to Neptune. Now, this only happens once a year. Neptune's sole job is to blur boundaries, right? So with Sun opposition Neptune, there could be kind of like some doubting, or maybe thinking that we want something that's not actually best for us, or that we don't actually want. It just maybe seems like the best thing to do. So kind of be mindful of that. So that's the one-way street. Then we have what we actually want, right? Which is something completely different. So we think that we want something, but what we really want is actually something else. So there's just kind of a little bit of this confusion, and this kind of starts to break down into this Venus square Mars that we have that's going on. Because what we actually want and the way that we're going about it are going in different directions, right? It's going in 2 different directions. So anyway, I think that's everything for this week. You know, I think that these are just a couple things to think about, and really just know that there are essentially these 2 different energies that are going on this week. You know, especially we're really going to feel the polarity of it more towards the end of the week, right? Where we have kind of on the one hand a lot of energy that is very grounding and you know, very mindful and present, and, you know, really kind of conducive to the physical world and our physical environment. Yet there's also kind of like this maverick kind of curveball thing that is coming, another kind of energy that's at play that's a little bit more erratic as well at the end of the week. So, you know, definitely just be mindful and aware of kind of these 2 different energies, and, you know, try to, you know, if you feel yourself kind of starting to get caught up in, you know, some of the confusion or commotion or whatever this weekend, you know, kind of try to take a step back and ground yourself, and really know that there is, I mean, there's literally 6 planets in Earth. So I think that finding some type of solid ground is not going to be too difficult of an endeavor. It's just a matter of knowing where to find it. So anyway, that's everything for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. You know, if you want to, if you have any comments or whatever, you want to leave them below. Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. But thanks for watching. I'll see you around. Cheers.